All right, welcome back to the CompTIA Pentest Plus training series, and we are going to go over the tools for reconnaissance and enumeration, and this is the last section of the second module. And as we move forward, every single module is going to have its own section for all of the tools that will be used for exploitation and payloads and everything else that we're going to be doing. So in this particular section, we're going to go over the tools for recon and enumeration. And as we've discussed so far in this entire module, the module number 2 for reconnaissance and enumeration, we're going to be gathering gathering information essentially. So recon and enumeration is just getting a bunch of research, getting a bunch of information about your target, getting intel on your target. And a lot of times you need tools to get those things done because they work faster for you. They can, we talked about scripting in the very last video, and all of these things are designed, the series of tools and the scripting concepts and all of those things are designed to make your life easier when you're doing recon and to get the result faster, because a lot of times you will be limited on the amount of time that you have available to run all the scans that you need to run or to get all the information that you need to get. And you can't sit there manually typing up commands or doing a variety of different things to gather intelligence. It's usually a lot easier to just use automated tools or to use scripting to get the information that you need. And to go over scripting, you can just watch the last video, section 2.3. That was the scripting, reconnaissance and enumeration scripting video. And in this particular video, we're going to be talking about all of the tools that are going to gather this information for us. And these are tools that actually are falling under the OSINT category, so open source intelligence, DNS lookups, network scanning, wireless reconnaissance, and packet analysis. And this is the list that we have so far. And by the time that we get to the actual practical section, usually what happens is I go off on a bunch of tangents and I go down rabbit holes and I start doing things that aren't necessarily inside the lesson plan, mainly because of the fact that I really want you to understand it and get a good grasp on it. And typically I end up just giving more information that's actually necessary. And I've done that several times inside of this series already as well. I literally do it all the time. I just go outside of the lesson plan because I nerd out about these things. And then I just want you to have more information than you actually need so that if it's ever presented to you, you never go lacking. You know what I mean? That's the whole purpose behind it. I just want you to be super equipped and prepared. So for the web-based stuff, we have the Wayback Machine. We're going to review it. Maltego, Recon NG, Shodan, and Spiderfoot. These are the web-based recon tools. Then there's the DNS and Whois lookup tools. So Whois is literally a command that you can just type into your terminal and then say whoisexample.com, and then it'll get you information like that. You can do the same thing with an IP address. NSLookup and dig essentially serve the same purpose. There's also a web-based NSLookup, which is nslookup.io, which does the same thing that running the command line version of NSLookup would do. Dig gives you a little bit more information, or I should say a lot of bit more information than NSLookup would. NSLookup just gives you the IP address for a domain name or the domain name for an IP address. That's kind of essentially all it does for you. Dig gives you much more information about that IP address or domain name. Then we have census.io, hunter.io, DNS dumpster, and Amass. And for the most part, all of these tools are going to be getting you DNS information, the records for the DNS, as well as Whois information. All of those things, again, just fall under gathering information about the DNS, gathering information about potentially the registrar, the register, the registerer, I guess that's the phrase, the company that's assigned to it, any contact information that may be available, and a variety of other things that could potentially serve useful to us as we move forward with exploitation and payloads and the rest of Pentest. Then we have network wireless enumeration tools. This is, in my point of view, in my perspective, that's the most exciting series of tools that we're going to be running upon. And network enumeration is very, very important. Wireless enumeration is insanely important, especially when you are trying to find let's say you're outside of a building. Again, don't do this, please, without permission. It's a felony. I have to keep giving these disclosures because we're going to start going deep into a lot of really, really crazy information that can be used for malicious activities. And I can't stop you, but I have to disclose it to you. It is a felony. Anything that you do without permission is a felony in this world, and you can get a lot of jail time. You can get very, very severe fines, and yeah, just keep that in mind. Wireless enumeration would be trying to, let's say you're hired to do a black box pen test, which is essentially they say, attack us. We're not going to give you any information about us. We're not going to give you the wireless name. We're not going to give you the password to the wireless. We're not going to give you the IP address that we want you to scan. We're not going to give you any operating system information, any service information, nothing. You're going to get nothing. All you have is permission to attack us. That's all it is. And so when you do that, one of those things, one of the ways that you want to get into the network is, okay, let me see if I can detect the wireless around here. And then let me see if I can actually connect to the wireless, right? And so getting a tool like AirCrack NG, for example, that will actually allow you to potentially crack the password of a wireless network so that you can actually enter that wireless network. And then once you're in there, you can start doing lateral movement exercises and doing further reconnaissance as you're inside of the network, and then kind of build your intelligence further and then get potential users that you can exploit, so on and so forth. So network and wireless enumeration was the one topic that was of most interest to me personally. As I started studying pen testing and just going into this, I was like, dude, this is kind of really, really cool. And thankfully, by the time that I actually learned how to do it, enough ethical and moral guidelines had been exposed to me that I was like, okay, I'm not going to go attack my neighbor, because I really, at the time, I really had it out for my neighbor. And I really wanted to hack my neighbor's Wi-Fi just so if I could see if I could do any damage or anything. And I am proud to admit that I did not do that. And I could have, though. I'll just throw that out there. You know, neighbor, if you know who this is, if you know who I am, you almost got attacked at one point. Ex-neighbor from Los Angeles. Just throwing that out there. So we have Nmap, NSE, The Harvester, Wiggle.net, Wireshark, TCP Dump, and AirCrack NG, which are going to fall under our categories of network and wireless enumeration tools. And I'm going to give you an introduction to these tools. I'm going to give you some sample queries that you can run using these tools. I'll show you where to download them, but we're not going to start using them because we're not at the practical section yet. And again, every section that we go into, as we go into the next module and as we go into the module after that, by the time that we get to the final module, which is going to be all of the practicals, which is literally just me doing the attacks, right? Me running queries, running commands, doing Nmap queries, trying to find information about various IP addresses and et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's going to be all of the stuff that we've talked about applied. Until then, every single module is going to have a section similar to this that's going to say tools for exploitation, tools for fill in the blank. So this is kind of what it's going to be like. And for each one of those modules, each one of those sections, I'm going to introduce the tool to you. I'm going to show you what it does. I'm going to show you where to download it, how to run some sample commands, so that by the time we get to the practical section, and assuming that you're a person that, you know, isn't watching this as I launch them, I'm assuming that there are people that will find this, you know, several months down the line, and now they're binge watching all of these things, and they want to know where to get these tools so that they can prepare themselves for the practical portion and start running them. So this is all to prepare you for those series of videos. To get the Pentest Plus notes, practice questions, and to join a supportive community of like-minded people like you, consider joining the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels will get exclusive content like line-by-line code explanations for how to create cybersecurity
cybersecurity and Pentest Plus scripts, like exclusive downloads that they will get. For example, the notes document for this Pentest Plus and everything that I'm using for the lectures, as well as all of the practice questions and everything else that will go along that will be made for the scripts and everything else that we're going to be doing for the Pentest Plus training series. There will be free pre-made monthly Python automations that have to do with system administration, cybersecurity defense, as well as, of course, Pentest Plus and ethical hacking. And then there's going to be monthly live streams with me every single month, plus so many other things that you would get as a part of being a member of Hackaholics Anonymous in these tiers. To join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there. Or you can go to youtube.com/@hankhackshackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us continue with Pentest Plus.
Our first web-based recon tool is the Wayback Machine, and it's web-based, so it's a website that you can actually access and retrieve information from. It's an internet archive. Basically, that's what the Wayback Machine is. And this is the domain name for it. Okay, so it's I originally, when I first heard about this, I was trying to like Google Wayback Machine, and it took me a little while to find out that it's actually web.archive.org, and it stores historical snapshots of websites, and you can retrieve deleted pages, leaked credentials, or removed endpoints. Now, if a company has a strong security posture, they will have deleted these leaked credentials or the endpoints that may be vulnerable, or versions of web pages that contain API keys. All of these things, in a good environment, in a secure environment, those things should be deleted, right? You should not be able to access them by simply looking at the archive of the company. However, some companies don't do that. Some companies just have an automated kind of update that's turned on, and they don't have a web developer. They don't have anybody that's on their security team. It could be a sole prop or like a really small LLC, but they are the target, or they have hired you to do something and they don't know what their security posture is like. And the business owner, this happens a lot, by the way, the business owner goes to a place like Upwork or Fiverr, and they'll hire somebody to install their website for them. They'll hire somebody to teach them, okay, this is where you go to, look at your user list, and your client list is here, and this is where you go to edit your web pages, etc. But they are not taught security philosophy, security concepts. They're not taught any of these things. So the developer, the original developer that was hired on Fiverr, just sets up the website. Then they're like, go here to log in. This is how you create web pages. This is how you look at your user list or your client list, etc. This is how you collect payments. This is where you go to change your payment information, etc. Right? And then they hand it off to the owner of the company. And the owner of the company is the person that just manages the website. And then they have a few people in their shipping department that ships out products or orders. They have a few people in customer service. They have their personal assistant. Nobody in that company is there to handle security, okay? I know people personally that are doing several $1 million per year in their company, and this is their setup. They have a handful of employees. The CEO is the person that handles most of the stuff with the website, if not everything on the website. And then if they need to do anything, they'll just hire somebody, a contractor, a freelancer from Upwork or from Fiverr to do the thing that they do, and that's it. They just leave it at that. So they don't look at removed admin panels or hidden directories or exposed APIs or API keys or sensitive data that used to be in past versions of the web pages or retrieved deleted page. They don't look at any of these things because there's an automatic update that's set up, and then once that automatic update just updates, it doesn't necessarily remove the old pages, right? It doesn't. And that's the thing. This is where the attack vector exists, is looking at a website or looking at a web page or whatever it is, and seeing what you can retrieve from the old versions of it. So that being said, let us now actually go and check out what the web archive or web.archive.org actually looks like. And here we go. So this is the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive. This is a free resource that you can donate to allow the resource to continue to run. And then look, you have all these things right here. NBC News, right? October 21st, 2013. This is the version of NBC News' website. So if I just click on that, we'll be able to look at that outdated version because it's literally from 2013, right? So we can also see it up here where you can actually kind of move back and forth in the years or the specific date, and then it'll retrieve that web page for you. This specific web page, I guess, has to do with, I don't know if this is like, I think this is like a sample of their home page, because right here, if we look at it, it just says NBCnews.com. I don't think there's any specific article, and so this just happens to be the headline on NBCnews.com: 2 killed and 2 wounded in shooting, etc., etc., etc. And so you get to see this. Now, there are a lot of different ways that we can try to analyze this specific information on this page. So if I actually click on this and do inspect, more often than not, I'll actually get to inspect the way that this specific page was set up, right? So if we look at that, so if we go over here and scroll further down, we can see that we actually have, oh no, you know what? I stand corrected. So this seems to be just the stuff that's available through the Wayback Machine. This is not actually anything about the web page itself from the old version of NBC News. So I was really going to try to see if we could actually get source code that is available on this web page, but it seems to be that we cannot get the source code that's available on this web page. So this is just a version of NBC News from 2013. Essentially, that's what it is. So if we go back to the homepage of Wayback Machine, you can always just go and search for the various, or browse through these various websites that are here, or you can just go here and click on this search portion right here. And then from here, you can, I'll do this, right? I'll just, since we already have it, I'll just do NBCnews.com. And then we can see that NBCnews.com, over the span of what? Since 2000, it's been a very long time, actually. Since 1999. So the first series of snapshots of this webpage started in 1998, actually, because you can see something at the very, very end of 1998. So it started in 1998, and it went on and continued to be snapshotted until the most recent decade right here. From the 2012s on forward, you can see that their website was getting way more snapshots, because most likely up until this point, they were not really very active on the web. And then what happened after the fact is that they started really becoming active on the web. And so you can now see all of these snapshots being generated. And if we scroll through any of them, or if we hover over any of them, you can see that on February 3rd, 2013, there were 17 snapshots. And then you can see the various times of the snapshots. And so this is what's really interesting, okay? So if you go and look at these various times of snapshots that are available for this particular website, or whoever your target website is, when you start looking at the snapshots, the different versions of the website that were snapshotted, right, during these different times, you can just, based on the analysis of it, right? Based on the analysis of these things, you can be like, okay, you know what? Back around this time that they weren't doing very many snapshots, it's most likely that they weren't even focused on the security of their website a lot over here. So maybe there's something interesting about these series of web pages that we might potentially use as leveraged information. You can look at, the format of the web page looks very, very different here than if we were to look at the most recent versions of them in 2025, for example. So let me see if I can actually skip to it directly from here. If not, we can just go back to the last web page and then come to 2025 right here, click on 2025 and get the most recent snapshots from May 24th of 2025. And then we can click on that, and then we can see what it is. And today is actually May 24th of 2025. So there's actually a snapshot from today, or multiple snapshots from today. And if we look at the NBC News website from today, you can see the format of the site is very different, right? The actual visual aesthetics is very different. Their menu has changed. The data tends to be similar, like where it's just basically a bunch of articles that's displayed on the page, but the format has changed. The accessibility of the various links at the bottom have changed, and all of these things. For NBC News, it's a little bit difficult because I know for a fact that, or at least I think, so if we look at Wappalyzer, and here I go going down the rabbit hole here, Wappalyzer is going to look at, I think it's going to look at actually the Web Archives website. I don't think it's going to be looking at the NBC News website. So we would actually have to run Wappalyzer on the NBC News website to try to see what different applications and plugins are installed on their website, and if anything, so if they do have data management, or database management, I should say, if they do have database management, let's see if I can zoom in. I can't zoom in like that, so I clicked on it now, and let's click on this again, do Wappalyzer one more time, and we're going to manually zoom in here. If we look at it, you can see that they have the analytics and reverse proxies, and Nginx is their web server, so we can try to see what version of Nginx they're running by running Nmap and things like that. So you can get information from a variety of different sources. Wappalyzer was not something that's included for the Web Archive, for the Wayback Machine, but the Wayback Machine can be used. NBC News is just not the good version. It's not a good website to use as an example, I don't think, because they do have, or at least they should have, a really strong security posture. And I'm trying to think of like a small company that might have a website that might be a little bit outdated or something like that, where we can try to see what potentially could be used. LAPL.org, the Los Angeles Public Library.org. That's another website that just popped on the top of my mind because I was using their database recently. They have a bunch of information on here as far as the snapshots that are concerned, and then we can try to see what we can pull as far as the versions of their websites, and then compare them to the current version of the website that's running, try to see if we can find any differences, so on and so forth. So I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit right now, but this does seem to be like the most recent version of the LAPL website. And then from here, we can try to see if any additions have been made to it, if any changes have been made to it, if any of these links at the bottom don't exist anymore. So if I click on Contact Us, hopefully it'll take us to, the lapl.org contact page. So these links can actually be further clicked on, and then we can go deeper into each snapshot of these websites to try to see what information we can pull about these websites and the various links that exist through those snapshots. So you're doing manual reconnaissance at this point when you pull up an old version of a website, and then when you click on the various links that exist through that snapshot, because these links are actually live links, right? So if we go to the 2005 version of the LAPL website and then look at a snapshot from 2005, the links on that snapshot will still be active and you can still click on them. So notice how this is a way different looking type of a website, and based on this, we can try to see if there's any information that we can find about this specific site. There's a sitemap button at the bottom right here, and through the sitemap button, we can potentially find all of the links that are here, and maybe some links that could essentially at some point be used for manipulation or trying to find more information, etc. So there are the links through these snapshots actually work. These are actually very, very useful versions of the snapshots of these websites because you can actually click on them and see if there's anything that you can find from them. I'm looking at really big organizations. LAPL is a big organization. They've been around for a very long time. NBC News is a big organization. In your particular case, in your situation, the website that you would be looking at, ideally, hopefully, it wouldn't be google.com, right? Because google.com is so secured, and the snapshots that exist for Google are most likely not going to provide any good information to you. However, the smaller companies that just have these WordPress websites or a Wix website, something like that, those companies, you can most likely pull some interesting information from the versions of the archived web pages and website archives that exists for those companies. So I'm gonna stop talking about this because I'm gonna probably tend to repeat myself over and over and over again, and I don't want to do that because I have been told that I tend to kick a dead horse or kill a dead, I forget the phrase, but I tend to talk about a certain topic too often. That's what I've been told. So let's move on to Maltego here. Okay, Maltego is an OSINT tool. It's an open source intelligence tool, and it links people, domains, emails, organizations, social media data, and it does it in a graph format. So I'll show you some visuals just so you can kind of see what that means. It can identify the relationships between entities, like an email that might be linked to multiple social media accounts, very useful. Mapping infrastructure connections, subdomains, DNS records, IP addresses, retrieving leaked passwords and breach data. This is kind of insane. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the passwords are still good, but breach data, very, very useful. Leaked passwords, very useful. Common transformations that we can use. A transformation is something that is native to Maltego. So it's just a terminology that's used to explain what it can do with data. It can essentially transform data into graph visualizations, right? So extracting WHOIS information for domain names, mapping IP addresses to organizations, identifying social media accounts linked to an email address. These are a lot of common use cases for Maltego. So let's look at what this actually would be like. This is the Maltego website, found at maltego.com, as you can see right here. And, the claim to fame is investigate 12 times faster with the world's most used cyber investigation platform. And these are a lot of the organizations that use it. You can have monitoring activities. You can have investigation activities, customization of the data and the graphs that are presented to you, management of the various usage, billing, or access. Or that part is kind of when you go into the paid version of Maltego and you have a lot of different users and how much of the service that they actually use, what you would get billed at, etc. The pricing offers a community version, which is going to be the version that we are going to use for the demonstration when we get to the practical section. The community edition of Maltego has the link analysis software. It has out-of-the-box access to commercial data, 200 credits per month, connectors to external data, and Maltego Academy that we can actually use to learn more about it. And there's a lot more features as well. Then there's the professional version that's good for individuals, investigators, or small teams. And you can have 5 users, and the billing is per user. And then there's the organization version, which you will most likely have to actually get some kind of a quote from them to see what pricing they would give you. In case you were actually interested in a professional plan for yourself or for your organization, the professional plan, let me see if this will load in time here for us. It's going to quote it to us at 6,000 euros per year. So if we convert it to USD, it would be $6,600 per year. Okay. And that's for one user. Okay, so let's kind of zoom in here. So 6,600 per year for one user. Two users would be 13,200. 3 users, 19,800. So it's not really giving you a discount on anything. So if you get 2 users or 2 years or 3 years, not users, 2 years or 3 years, it's not giving you a discount necessarily. It's just that I guess you get to kind of play around with the actual prices or bill it in advance. Same thing if we went to do quantity being the 5 subscriptions. In this particular case, this is what you would be doing if you had 2 users, right? So if you add 2 users, it's still 13,200. So again, there's no discount applied if you get volume or anything like that. And it is a fairly hefty price tag. The difference is it's actually very useful. So I've done a video on Maltego very briefly. I did a video on Maltego because we were doing a room on TryHackMe that allowed us to kind of use one of the versions that they had, and it was the community version. It was not the paid version, so there were like limitations to it. And it's still, even on the limited format, even in the community version, it's still a very powerful tool and it's still very useful. And this is one of the things that we're going to be using as we go into our practical section, and we want to do reconnaissance using tools and things like that. So that's what Maltego in general is, just kind of showing you a demonstration of what it can do. We'll look at the various elements of Maltego. Okay, so this is the Maltego graph, and this is available on their website if you just wanted to watch this demonstration video real quick. He is currently creating a graph that would be designed for, I believe, this domain that you see on the screen in front of you. Let me see if I can kind of zoom in on this just to make it a little bit more visually appealing. I can't zoom in on it. Interesting. I can't go full screen with it. If we probably went to YouTube, we'll probably be able to go full screen with it. But as you can see, once he adds the domain name and he starts adding various elements of the domain to it, you can start creating these tree graphs or brain map type graphs where all of these things start getting connected to each other, and you can start to expand. Look at that. So you see, you can start to expand to see what the various elements of the organization might be. In this particular case, he started out with the domain name, and he's expanding on the various elements of the domain name. That could be usernames inside that domain. It could be IP addresses inside the domain. It could be graphs, or excuse me, not graphs. It could be the various assets inside of the domain, and everything else in between. So what you see towards the end is that view right here. This thing that you see right there is the overall view that you have, where it ends up being it's literally like a graph, right? So it's kind of crazy to think about that. Each one of these elements, each one of these things right here is a series of usernames or a series of IP addresses or assets that would be inside of that specific network. And this massive thing that you see right here, the color coding will help you decide the shapes of the various dots that you see, or the little squares that you see. They represent different things. And as we go deeper into it, again, you will start seeing the usages that are available for Maltego and what you can do. The version that he's using, I highly doubt, is the community version. We will go ahead and try to see what we can do, how far we can push the community version, but it just visualizes the various elements and assets inside of an organization, inside of an IP address or a website. And one of the things that we saw was, just trying to find what different social media accounts might be connected to a given email address. That could be one way that you can do it. So it's just a visualization of the data, just to make it a little bit easier for you to look at everything on one screen. The next one that we have would be Maltego Search. Maltego Search is where you actually can use one of their mechanisms to search for something. So we have this comment right here. I'm just going to pause this real quick. You live near the Boston area. I got a heater if you need a piece, meaning a gun. Just don't be a cop or I'll shoot you myself. WhatsApp or texting now number would be whatever the phone number is. And now we have this username right here, the ScaryRed24 username. So let's say you want to find out what would be connected to that username, what other locations you can find it. So you would go between alias or email address or whatever it is on Maltego Search, and in this case he searched for ScaryRed, and then ScaryRed and the various aliases under ScaryRed potentially, or the ones that would be connected to it, start showing up. Email addresses start showing up, names potentially that have been used for these various usernames start showing up. Social media accounts start showing up. You can find the email, as you can see right here. He pulls that up, the data lineage of it, and there's a lot of good information that you can find just based on somebody's username. And this is open source intelligence, right? So it's actually looking at all the stuff that's available online that would be available, and then you can go ahead and start adding the various elements of your search to a new search. You can start now searching for, instead of ScaryRed as a username, you can do ScaryRed24 at the Gmail address. So now you're looking at his email address, and from that, now you can start seeing, okay, there is a Tumblr account here. It's very, very difficult to see because it's like super small, but there's the Dropbox account, there's Tumblr, 12 billion for something, what is that? Master Comp. There's a lot of different websites. Bitly is available over here. There's images that are associated with it. There's other aliases that are associated over with it. There's the GPS coordinates that would be associated with it. Social media links on the right side that would be associated with it. There's a lot of different information that you can pull just by looking at somebody's email address. So we started with the username. We went into an email address. The email address was connected to other types of accounts. And now we're looking at the graph of that connection. So you see how it can quickly start visualizing data for you. You look at GPS coordinates, you can start seeing where the actual potential latitudes and longitude coordinates of this particular location, or, assuming that that's actually their location and they're not using a VPN or anything like that. That's kind of what that information would look like, and that's what you can pull from looking at the search. So monitor, evidence, and data, as you can kind of tell just by the names of them, they will allow you to have, for example, monitoring capabilities. You can use the monitor feature to monitor social media in real time with AI-driven analysis of massive data volumes. And I mean, that's kind of the best description I can use. I don't think there's an actual demo video for this, but for the most part, there's going to be a massive amount of open source intelligence data that will be brought together and ingested, very similar to what would happen with a SIEM tool, a security information and event management tool. With SIEM tools, you get data from a variety of different endpoints, from a variety of different sources that all come to one central location, which is the SIEM. And then the SIEM ends up analyzing all of that data and correlating, humanizing the data so that it becomes easily readable by the human eye so that we can decipher it easily. And then you try to make sense of whatever the data is that's been presented to you and see if anything is of note. A lot of times in SIEM tools, at the very least, a lot of times it's just looking at the network data. There may not necessarily be anything malicious or any kind of alert for you to look at or consider. And Maltego will do the same thing, but it does it with ingesting data from a variety of different sources. So you have massive data volumes that are available through social media in the real-time element of it. That's the part where I think is actually very interesting. And you have AI-driven analysis that'll help you analyze the data a little bit easier, or at least point out some things that might be of note or useful to you. But the real-time element of ingesting and analyzing massive data volumes from various social media sources would be one of those key elements of using Maltego. And basically what we've done up until this point, the graphing point or the graphing feature kind of connects to everything else that's available inside of Maltego. But the one where we used the search and we went from the username and then we ended up with the email address, and then you go ahead and connect all of the different social media accounts that may be connected to that email address to your monitoring feature, and you start monitoring all of the activity and the data from all of the different social media sources connected to that specific email address. And you can start seeing how these things actually end up building on top of each other and getting you some really, really good intel. Now, the evidence feature is actually a very interesting feature. It used to be called the social network harvester. And essentially what you can do is you can gather the evidence before it's deleted, right? Because you're doing live monitoring, real-time monitoring. You can gather the evidence before it's deleted. And one of the features that it has is that it says that it can create court-ready evidence for you, right? So if we look at Maltego evidence, you can have a simple, the interface is easy. There's automated data. All of that stuff is like fairly nice to be able to have. You can start crawling a variety of different profiles all in real time and start building up a database of just intel in general. And some of that intel might actually be useful in the sense that when you go further with your investigation or you need to present something to somebody of note, like a judge, for example. And in this case, you can, what he's going to end up doing is that he's going to start looking at Facebook. And from Facebook, he can start looking at the timelines, the saved active stories, comments. This is insane. Like when you really start looking at all the things that you can actually pull from somebody's Facebook profile. And then, of course, you can start connecting the various usernames that you are going to be monitoring. This is, just to keep in mind, this is actually like really, 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 really crazy. Really freaking scary when you really think about the fact that somebody can sign up for this tool, which is Maltego, and then using Maltego, they can now be monitoring your username, right? They can be monitoring your user profiles at these various locations, X, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, and they're building a file on you. They're building a bunch of data on you. And as a pen tester doing this against a company that you were hired to pen test, you can start looking at the various employees of the company, start building databases of these employees. If they have too many employees, then you can select the key employees, the management and other people that are of note and usually like very, very high privileged individuals that actually have access to user accounts that can do a lot of different things, and then you can start building intelligence based on those users, and then from there build potential attack vectors for social engineering those individual users. Then obviously you can start building the graph on it and the way that these users are connected to each other and how they're connected to various social media profiles. And then this is the key part right here. You can export that data and use that data for your investigation, use it for the next step of your penetration test, and so on and so forth. So very, very, very powerful freaking tool, this Maltego, or at least obviously Maltego is powerful, but the Maltego evidence module is extremely powerful as well. And then we have this very, I call it simple, but the single pane of glass for all of the relevant data, which is known as Maltego data. Maltego data can be summed up with this little element right here. You have external data and internal data all being ingested in this one central location and then correlated to each other to try to find patterns and relevant piece of intelligence. And this data can be pulled from Facebook, it can be pulled from YouTube, it can be pulled from Instagram and X and TikTok, but it can also be pulled from VirusTotal. It can be pulled from Splunk, which is one of the key SIEMs that exists in the world of security analysis. IBM Radar, another one. Anomaly, Abuse.ch, all of these various sources of data can all be pulled together and correlated and curated so that you can go ahead and find persons of interest, cyber threat intelligence, anything from the dark web or corporate intelligence, and then go ahead and start expanding on your investigation. So your organization potentially could have these sources of data. With Maltego, you can integrate those data sources so that you have one central location to analyze all of them. And I know it's kind of blurry because I'm literally zooming in using my browser because I haven't opened this up in YouTube. I guess I could open it up. This is much easier to see as we can see now. Then you have the data hub partners that exist. So cyber threat intelligence, cryptocurrency, dark web, Alien Vault, Epios, Farsight, all of these various data sources that can be used to, again, compile your overall data. So let's go ahead and kind of speed this up so we can actually breeze through this a little bit. And then you can see that she's going to pull the user, which is whoever the alias is. And then once we click on the transformation to try to get data for this person, so you can get persons of interest. And then now you're looking at the various social media platforms is what she was going through, because I saw Tinder on there, I saw Tumblr on there, and all these different data sources that can be used. So now that can be integrated from external, right? So the open source intelligence, but it can also be integrated with internal data sources, which is, for example, what she's using is Splunk. She's connecting Splunk Enterprise to ingest data from Splunk, pull it into Maltego, and then try to correlate that data with stuff that's pulled from external data sources, which could, for example, be Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. And then based on that, now you have one central location to process all the data that you've gathered internally as well as externally. I would be remiss if I did not point out the fact that Maltego obviously has their own YouTube channel. They have a lot of videos for use cases and examples that you can use Maltego, and the demos and the dashboards and things like that. So if you have not checked it out, I would highly recommend that you do if you're interested in using this specific tool. And thankfully, because of the fact that it's built by a fairly large company, because of the fact that they're well funded, they have all of these tools or these videos that are available to display how you can use this specific tool to your advantage. So this would be something that I would check out if I had more time.
being, me being you. So if you have the time and if you're interested in it, I would highly recommend that you check it out because it can be a very powerful resource, especially if you can actually pay for one of those paid subscriptions to Maltego. Okay, moving on to Recon NG, and this is a modular OSINT framework, very similar to Metasploit, but it's designed specifically for reconnaissance. So it automates OSINT gathering from Shodan, VirusTotal, Hunter.io, it's just to name a few. It extracts subdomains, email addresses, DNS records, and metadata, and it has API integration that's already built into it for third-party data sources like VirusTotal, because you can get a free API key or API token, I should say, from VirusTotal. Same thing with Shodan and all these different sources. They allow you to integrate with their APIs and they'll give you an API key. And for the most part, those API keys are free. When you use Recon NG, it is modular and it's command line based. So if you want to call upon it, first you call the actual program name itself. So recon-ng, and then it'll take a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds depending on the speed of your computer, and then it'll load. And once it's loaded, very similar to Metasploit, because in Metasploit we also do this command where we say use and then we give it the path to the module that we want to use. So in this particular case, it's recon domain hosts and hacker target, and then the set source would be whatever the domain name would be, and then you run the module itself. So this is very, very similar to the syntax that's available inside of Metasploit. You first call on MSF console instead of recon ng, Metasploit starts, then you use the module that you want to use, you set whatever variables or whatever options you have to set that are required for that specific module to run, and then you run it. There's also the option where you can search for something. So let's say you want to search for a specific type of attack. You can actually do search first, and then once you have the search, you'll see all the paths of different modules that are available for you, and then based on that, you can look at the descriptions of the different modules, see which one actually is the thing that you're trying to do or something close to what you're trying to do, and then based on that, you can use it and then set the options for it, or do show options just to see which options are required for that module to run, and then from there you'll go ahead and set the option and then run it. In this particular example, it'll extract host names that are associated with the domain name using the hacker target API. So hacker target, as you can see right here, is something that is an OSINT source, again, that can be connected to it using hacker target. Now, in this particular case, I would assume that you also need to actually connect the hacker target API or go get an API from hacker target, API key from hacker target, and then use that API key to run it. That would be just my assumption in this particular case. And then you'll get host names, right? Host names are another way of saying the name of the computer, the name of the host that would be associated with this specific domain. Our next one is a really popular tool called Shodan, and it's known as the hacker's search engine. And it literally is a search engine that you can use to search for internet exposed devices. So it could be a camera, it could be an ICS, an industrial control system, misconfigured servers, actual computers, anything along those lines, anything that's actually connected to the internet and it's exposed, meaning that it can actually be detected for the most part. We can look at Open Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP. We can look at Open SSH FTP in IoT devices. So these are actual ports that we can connect to potentially. IoT devices would be Internet of Things, and a camera would be an Internet of Things device. A smart garage door opener that would be connected to somebody's cell phone, and then they can open their garage door using an application in their cell phone. That could technically be considered an IoT device. Industrial control systems technically could be considered an IoT device. So this is a very wide range of devices that falls under that specific category, and as long as they're connected to the internet and misconfigured in some capacity that we can actually find them,
then that's pretty much all you need. You can search for exposed databases, so MongoDB, Elasticsearch, MySQL, these types of relational databases that house a lot of really crazy information. Like, for example, usernames and passwords for all of your users that log into your website, or all of your employees that need their usernames and passwords to be able to log into their back office and do what they need to do. And then now you have, if I can get access to that database, now I can actually access all of your employee information. Pretty crazy stuff. And then detecting default credentials on vulnerable devices. So for example, if you have a Kali Linux machine that's set up that for whatever reason the default credentials were never changed, I can just log into that device by using the username Kali and the password Kali, and now I'm inside of that device. I'm inside of that virtual machine, or the server. A lot of people use Linux servers. It may not necessarily be a Kali Linux server. It could be a different type of Linux distribution, but a lot of companies use Linux servers as their web servers or their database servers and things like that. And that could just be one of those things that it's like, oh, they didn't change the default credentials for whatever reason. I don't know why they wouldn't, but they, absent-mindedness, right? They were careless or something like that. And so for that reason, they didn't change the credentials, and now we are in their systems. So let's do a couple of quick queries. Like, we'll look at a couple of quick queries on Shodan, and then I'll show you what it actually looks like on their website. So here are our sample queries here. So port 3389 is typically assigned to a remote desktop protocol, meaning it's a Windows machine that we can remote connect to, right? So we say we want to connect to port 3389, and the country is the United States. So I want to find any server that has port 3389 open inside of the United States. Very, very simple query. Another one would be the product, meaning the actual name of the product itself, the server itself. So this could be MySQL, it could be GraphQL, GRESQL, it could be anything, right? So we could say the product would be MongoDB, because we want to look for a Mongo database product or server or service. And then we want to look at the default port for it. So the port typically for Mongo database would be 27017. That would be assigned to that database so that we can access it. And then you can just find that out by doing some research on the Mongo documentation and be like, oh, okay, you can, when you install it, it's accessible through port 2717. So 27017. So you would search for product MongoDB and then do port 27017. So let's go and real quick see if we can actually find anything using these two queries inside of Shodan. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you log into Shodan. I logged in using Google. I basically did when you click login in the top right corner, it asks you if you want to create a username and password or enter your username and password, or if you want to just use your Google account. And I'm using my Google account to be able to do it. Very, very easy and simple. And so now we are presented with this search bar at the top right here. And to use this, you actually have to be logged in. So just keep that in mind. So port 3389, and then we're going to do country and then US, right? So boom, port 3389, country US. There is 1 million freaking results. Kansas City has 329,000 ports. Redwood City, Mountain View, Ashburn, New York City, my goodness. Google LLC has 400,000 connections. This I accidentally clicked on more options under the states that are available, or the cities. I guess these are all cities that are available. San Francisco, North Bergen, Las Vegas. I am currently in Las Vegas. So if I click on Las Vegas, I'll probably be able to find those freaking things. And then when you notice is that it actually updates your query up here for you. So in case you're wondering how to form queries, you can actually see it right here. So country, US, city would be Las Vegas. And then look at this. It actually shows port 3389, administrator, Windows Server 2012. Very dangerous stuff. This is the IP address for it. Router hosting LLC, United States, Las Vegas. Issued by Windows US LA. This is insane. Issue 2. This is terrifying. This is terrifying. This is why they say that Shodan.io is the hacker's search engine, because just with a few clicks, all of a sudden, look at this. I can see these IP addresses that have their port 3389 exposed, essentially. And then you can go to town and start running a couple of just simple exploitations using Metasploit against this IP address, and next thing you know, you are logged into somebody's Windows account, which is terrifying. It's a felony, so I'm throwing that out there again. It's a felony, so keep that in mind. But it's just one of those things. Now, here's an interesting thing as we'll go a little bit deeper into it, right? So you see these operating systems right here. So, right, so it says Windows build, and then it gives you the different years of Windows or the different operating systems in Windows. So if I go and say what version of Windows is the Eternal Blue exploit for, right? So if I do that, Eternal Blue is one of these like really commonly known exploits that we've used a lot, and this is also known as the MS17010, and it targets a vulnerability in the SMB, the server message block version protocol used by Microsoft Windows operating systems, and it applies to Windows XP, Windows Vista, Server 2003, 8, 7, 8.1, Server 2012, Server 2012, RT, Windows 10, Server 2016. Okay, so now we go back over here. And let's see, do we have anything? Server 2022 doesn't apply to it. So let's see if we can look at more options over here. And now you can see Windows 11 is here, Windows 7 is here, Windows Server 2008 is here, Windows Server 2012 is here. It's scary stuff, dude. It's really scary stuff that like very easily you can start finding things that can be used for potential exploitations. And then we can look at it for Google. Like, Google LLC has 400,000 ports for 3389 that are open. That's insane. So if you click on that, 400,000 ports for Google LLC are going to show up. And then what are you going to do? And by the way, again, so it go ahead and it updated your query for you. So organization is now Google LLC. So if you wanted to zoom in on an organization, you would just use the org parameter and then give it some kind of an argument, and that would be the organization. So then we go into and be like, okay, well, in Kansas City and all these different cities, they have those things open. Kansas City is a very vulnerable freaking city. I wonder why that is. Then we have the remote desktop protocol, so RDP. Then there is the Nginx, OpenSSH, Jupyter, etc. So it went and updated to the port that we have inside of the United States, organization Google, but it still is now giving you these various services that would be accessible for that specific port. So remote desktop protocol, RDP, is literally the port 3389, so, which is why the bulk of the data is associated with that port. And then we're looking at Windows 11, and then we can click on this and try to see if we can find any of these Windows versions that would be vulnerable to it, and then go open up Metasploit. It's really insane, dude. Like, it's not that complicated when you start thinking about it. And it's like, okay, you go and pull up Metasploit, you search for the Eternal Blue exploit, which is probably the easiest exploit to configure in Metasploit to try to get access to any of these Windows devices. And then from there, you just run Eternal Blue exploit, which is insane to think about the fact that, okay, that's really all you have to do is like do a little bit of research, find these vulnerable versions of Windows, for example, and then just go ahead and run the exploit using Metasploit. And now potentially you can get into Google's systems. Like, that's terrifying to think about. I do not encourage this. Please do not do this. Google most likely, even if these things are exposed, they're most likely tracking all of this stuff. And if you connect to one of their IP addresses without having permission to do so, they have the capabilities to come after you. They have the money and the resources to come after you, and they'll find you and they'll freaking arrest you, and it'll be a felony. I'm just telling you right now, man. Just be careful. Please be careful. Please be careful. So that was it for Shodan.io. And I mean, we can, I guess, technically use the other query as well, which is Mongo database. So I'll just copy this real quick, and then we can go ahead and try to see real quick if that'll work as well, which I can't imagine why it wouldn't work.
So we'll do Mongo database, port 27017. There you go. So 198,000 Mongo database results. United States, Germany, China. Oh, that's another thing, right? So let's say you're trying to find a specific country and you want to know what their country codes are. And again, I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole. I already said that I was going to do this, so you can't get mad at me for doing this. But there is country code. So if you're trying to find a device inside of a specific country, you can look up all of the country codes for Shodan IO. So China would be CN, right? And the United States was US. So very, very simple to be able to do something like this. And then now inside of China, we can look at the top cities that would have these results. So 21,000 results inside of China using Mongo database. These are all the companies that would be connected to it. Huawei, really, really big freaking company. And Huawei was actually, by releasing some of their cell phones into the United States, they were actually trying to do some reconnaissance and do some sneaky spy stuff against the United States citizens that all had Huawei, which is why Huawei phones were banned in the United States and probably in a lot of other countries as well, because they were doing the same exact thing in every other country that accepted Huawei phones. So, Huawei, one of those companies that actually did it. This is the just a simple query to be able to find their MongoDB, Mongo database, and then on the port, and then inside that given country. And then if we really wanted to look at it, we could just do something very simple like what are the country codes for Shodan, and then just do that, and then you'll be able to find it. And so you have this list right here, some very, very basic list right here. So US is the United States, CA is Canada, GB is Great Britain, United Kingdom, CN is China, Japan, Germany, France, Spain, Australia, etc. And then you can just go further into the documentation. And then right here on Shodan, there's literally a section for countries. And then you can try to find the countries that are listed. Actually, no. So that's incorrect. So this is the wrong place. Don't go to that place. I will usually just default into doing this. I'll just go to Gemini and then I'll ask that same question. Let me actually just copy this question real quick so I don't have to type it up, and then just go into Gemini and just paste it at the bottom right here. Be like, hey, what are the country codes for Shodan? And don't worry about that. And then boom, here we go. So for example, these are the country codes, and then that's what you can use. Give me the top 20 countries, and let's see what we can get out of Gemini here. And so here's what we got. So the top 20 countries and their country codes are as such. So we have China, United States, Germany, Russia, Brazil, Japan, India, France, United Kingdom, etc. And it says Shodan determines the top countries based on the number of internet connected devices it finds and indexes within those countries. While the exact ranking can fluctuate daily, here are the consistently top countries. So China actually has more internet connected devices than the United States does. And that makes sense because they have like hundreds of millions more people over there. They have like 1 point something billion people. The United States has like 400 million people. So it makes sense that China would have the most internet connected devices. And in the United States, Germany, Russia, Brazil, Japan. India is actually interesting because they're also in the billions as far as their population is concerned, but they don't have that many internet connected devices, or at least devices that would show up on Shodan IO anyways. So that's what we got for Shodan. You will have so much fun. You can burn so much time just doing this on Shodan. And I mean, I recommend it. I think you should learn how to use this tool. It's very freaking powerful and very, very useful, as you just saw. Moving on to Spiderfoot, and this is another automated OSINT tool that scans domains, emails, and IPs for intelligence. It can extract subdomains, emails, whois data, and any potential leaks. It scans for open ports and vulnerabilities and checks breached credentials linked to an organization. Really powerful tool. It is a Python module, or it's a series of Python scripts, I should say. So you actually do need to have Python installed, and this is basically it, right? So Python sf.py, which is the extension for any kind of Python script, and this is how you call on any kind of Python script.
and then you would give it the domain function or the domain option, excuse me, which is example.com in this case, and then you would say module all, right? You want to pull all of the data, a full OSINT scan on a given domain, and then see what it can potentially pull for you. So this one is pretty straightforward, but it's extremely powerful. So this is another one of these tools that will most likely yield a lot of really, really good results for you. And it's something that is good to have inside of your arsenal of weapons, I should say. So that one is called Spiderfoot. Let's see if we can find anything from their website. I feel like this is going to be a GitHub repository type of a thing that we'll be able to look at, but let's see what I can find online real quick. So yes, Spiderfoot is typically when you just Google it, it is a GitHub repository. That's the first thing that pops up. But there's literally a link right here from Kali Linux under tools that actually has Spiderfoot listed as one of the tools that comes, I would say, pre-installed with Kali Linux, which is one of the reasons why Kali Linux is the main distribution for pen testing and hacking. And this is what we can see right here. This is what it will look like if we pulled it up. So Spiderfoot-H for the help menu. And then you can see that the usage would be calling on the script and then using any of these various options to be able to pull data. So -D would be for debug mode, -L would be for an IP and port address combination to listen on, -M would be to enable a given module. And if you do -M all, which is what you just saw, you'll be able to call on all of the modules. If you do M, it'll list the available modules for you, so you can pick and choose from what you want. That's pretty much it. I mean, you can literally read through all of these options that are available here to try to get a better idea of what it looks like. And then Spiderfoot CLI, which is the command line interface of Spiderfoot. It'll give you a help menu for how to use the command line best. And of course, you can, look at that. So we have, this is the original version, which is the script itself, which is used by Spider sf.py. And then this one right here is calling on the sfcli.py. And this is assuming that you're not using Kali Linux, because Kali Linux has it installed as a module. So you can technically just call on it by just doing Spiderfoot and then giving it the various options instead of having to do sf.py, technically. If you don't have Kali Linux, or if you don't have the Python file, the series of Python scripts for Spiderfoot installed as a module where you can reference it by just calling on a name like this, if you don't have this set up like that, then you would have to do Python sf.py and then give it these variety of options to be able to use it. But if you have Kali Linux, which is what I have inside of a thumb drive that I use and I love it, it's one of my favorite little things that I've done for myself, and I recommend that you do that as well. If you don't know how to install something on a thumb drive from Kali Linux, go ahead and watch the Linux Plus playlist, the Linux Plus training series. It's in the first video, so the installation of how to do Kali Linux either on your actual computer or to do it on a thumb drive is in the first video of the Linux Plus, the CompTIA Linux Plus training series that's on this channel. And then you'll learn how to install it. And I have it installed on a thumb drive because I want to be able to take it with me wherever I need to go and then just plug it in and run it. And that's my thing. So you can do whatever version that you want. But this is Spiderfoot, and it does come pre-embedded inside of Kali Linux distributions. All right, now that we are on the DNS and Whois lookup section, I'm going to burn through these fairly quickly because they are pretty straightforward, and I don't need to go and do a Google search or go look at their website to be able to pull information for you. And I have already covered these commands, or several of these commands at the very least, in previous videos on this specific playlist, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. The very first one is Whois, which retrieves the domain registration details. So who's the owner of the domain, who's the registrar that the domain is registered upon, the creation date of it, any creation details like the email address of the administrator, for example. That would be done with dig, I think, actually. So I don't think Whois will give you all the details about the registrant information itself. But Whois, and then give it the example or the domain name that you're looking for. And that's pretty much it. That's how you use it. And it reveals the registrant name, the email address, expiration date, anything that might be relevant that is publicly available that has not been paid to hide. And a lot of times those things are not paid to hide because it costs extra money, and some people are not willing to spend that extra money because they don't think that it's important. So that is just data that's available for you, and it's a very quick script that can be, or a quick command that can be ran to be able to pull the information. The way that I would do these things is I would go ahead and create a script that would run a whois query for me, and then it would run NS lookup queries for me. It would run dig, and then get all of those things ran with one script. So instead of having to manually run whois and then look at it and all these things, I'll just run one giant script that does all of these queries for me, and then export all of the file or output all of the data into a file that I can reference later on and pull information from. So we talked about scripting in the last video, so you can go ahead and try to look at that. There's also, if you're interested in learning how to create shell scripts for Bash inside of Linux, then again, it would be the last video that's inside of the Linux Plus playlist that you can go ahead and see how easy it is to create scripts for Bash and Shell and Linux. Same thing with Python and things like that. So for our use case, what we're going to end up doing most likely is we're going to end up using a Kali Linux machine when we actually get into the actual practical portion of all these things. So I would highly recommend that you actually go get an installation of Kali Linux if you don't already have one. Get a laptop that has Kali Linux on it, go install Kali Linux on a thumb drive, or do whatever it is. Use VMware or VirtualBox to install Kali Linux, whatever you got to do to get access to it, because it is a very comprehensive distribution and it has a lot of tools that are already pre-installed on it that we're most likely going to end up using. And then when we start creating shell scripts and everything else, that will be the command line, or I should say the environment, the distribution, and the scripting language that we're going to end up using is going to be Bash and shell scripting, which is native to Linux. So just kind of throwing that out there just so you are fully aware of that. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And this is actually going to be a tag team combo right here. NSLOOKUP and dig are two different tools, and they're both used on the command line, or they can be both used on the command line. There is actually a version of NSLOOKUP that is nslookup.io, which is a website that you can just go ahead and enter a domain name or an IP address, and it'll pull that data for you. So what it does, or what these two do, is to pull the DNS records to extract IP addresses, mail servers, and subdomains, which is a much more comprehensive version of the DNS records that are pulled than what you would get from whois, right? So if you do NSLOOKUP and then, for example, getting the MX records, the mail exchange records for this specific domain name, that would be the mail server for that domain. And then in this case, using the AXFR, which is the asynchronous full zone transfer, or full zone, I forget what this actually stands for, but it basically takes all of the data from a given domain, and if it's been misconfigured to allow that data to be pulled, because usually you can pull the data as long as it's configured correctly, and what it'll allow it to do is, if the IP address that is requesting that data is on their list of trusted IP addresses, then it'll send all the data, including the, actually, let me just give you the full set of data that this query will actually pull. So it stands for asynchronous full transfer zone. That's what AXFR stands for. And it will pull the IPv4, IPv6, mail records, name server records, TXT records, subdomains and their associated IP address, even internal network information or hosts that are not publicly advertised. All of those things are hosted on this specific zone, this asynchronous full transfer zone. So if it has been misconfigured to allow AXFR requests from any IP address, then it can leak a complete list of the DNS records for that domain, which includes all of these things. And this element of it, the @ns1.target.com, specifies the particular DNS server that you want to query, in this case, ns1.target.com, and it's the host name of the server that's belonging to target.com domain, and you're telling dig to bypass the default DNS server configured to your system, directly asking the specific question. And then the target.com, which is the second element of it, is the domain that we're trying to request the zone transfer, and we're asking
this specific section, this particular DNS server, we're asking this DNS server to give us all of the records for target.com. So if you can actually find out what the DNS server subdomain is, you can then request the full transfer of that zone information for the given domain name to just be displayed onto your screen. And this was the full command that we had right here. So these are, very, very powerful. You can get a lot of information from a domain name, assuming that it's misconfigured. So that's like the key variable right there. If their DNS server is misconfigured to allow us to pull that information, then by doing a simple dig query, you can pull everything that you need about that given domain name. Or I guess I should say everything about their records, because you will run nmap to try to find open ports and those various things, and all of that information isn't going to be pulled by using dig. But at the very least, the records for that domain and everything else associated with it, those things can be pulled by using dig. The next one is Census.io, and this is another search engine that's for network devices that are connected to the internet, very similar to Shodan. And the reason why we should have access to two tools, number one, is because if one of them doesn't give you the data that you're looking for, you can always go to another one to see if that one can actually pull that data for you. The other reason is that Shodan, on its free version, it does have a paid version, and on its free version, it limits you to a number of queries per day. And I didn't run out of queries as I was doing the sample or the examples that I was doing for you earlier in this video. That kind of gives me a little bit of hope, because I don't know what counts as an official query, because I feel like every time that we click on one of those extra options and then the query updates at the top of the screen, I thought that was an extra query. You know what I mean? Like anytime that you click on something, it's like, oh, you've used up one of your free queries. So in any case, using up all of your free queries on one platform, and then you still need to pull information, so you would move to the next platform and then you would try to do something similar. So in this particular case, we can see that you can find TLS certificates, exposed databases, IoT devices, and you can get an attack surface for an enterprise to be able to map out that attack surface for a company. So for example, a query in Census to try to find all the servers that are running OpenSSH version 7.4 would be services.servicename equals OpenSSH and services.software version equals 7.4. This is very, very different than what we saw on Shodan. It's a little bit more to know. But if we actually go to Census.io, I am certain, and I'm sure of it, that you can actually just kind of click around when you do just one search, and then the queries will update at the top of the screen, and then you can see what the various parameters are. For example, this would be a parameter, and then this would be the argument for the parameter. So you can do the same thing that we did in Shodan, but then there's of course the documentation for every single one of these websites, that if you just go look at the documentation, it'll tell you how to query the system to try to get the data that you're looking for. So let's do a quick glimpse. Let's look at Census.io real quick and see what it looks like. Okay, so another key difference between Census and Shodan is that, you land on Census, this is what their website looks like, very fancy, great information, use cases, all that stuff. If I wanted to create a free account, this is the button right here, right? You would click on this and they force you, they don't force you, right? It's like, it's not they're holding a gun to your head. But if you wanted to create an account, it's not like you can just click on, use Google to log in, which is what I did with Shodan, and then it just used one of my email addresses and it logged in. They actually ask you to fill out your first name and last name and organization and your phone number and email and password, all of those things, which is not a complicated form. So it's like, if you really wanted to use it, then you can go ahead and use it, and you can probably find a lot of really good information here as well. But it is an extra step that is typically not available, or not typically, it's just not required when you go to Shodan. So with Shodan, it's like a couple of clicks and you're logged in and you can start running. I'm not going to create a user account right now because I have already done too many things with my user accounts, and I will do this when we actually get into the practical section of this series, where we need to use these things for that practical element.
which is just procrastinating, really. It's like, it's more, that was a fancy, long-winded way of saying I'm just going to procrastinate until it's time for us to do the practical portion of this training series, and then I'll go ahead and open up a Census account. But in the meantime, if you're really interested in it, you can just go to census.io, which is actually census.com now. So it's not census.io, the domain name anymore. It's census.com. And then you can go ahead and create a free account and then kind of mess around with it and look at their documentation and see what different types of search queries that you can use, etc., etc. But a lot of big names use Census, right? So Security Infrastructure, Schweizer, Army, whatever, Stanford Medicine, Walmart, T-Mobile, as we can see, Bloomberg, right? All these big names, Microsoft, SanDisk, Bank of America, PepsiCo, all these people, all these governments, all these companies end up using Census.io, which is totally understandable because it is a very powerful tool to gather internet intelligence, as they call it. The next one is Hunter.io, and this extracts corporate email addresses from domains, which can be very handy when you're doing social engineering, or if you're trying to do some kind of a brute force attack and you need somebody's work email address. Finding company executive emails for phishing, or automating email collection for spear phishing campaigns, or let's say you're in sales. Technically, you could even use this if you're in sales and you're trying to build a leads list. That's technically a resource that you have. So for example, finding emails for example.com, you can do Hunter.io domain search and then example.com to try to see what you can find. I actually just created a real quick account with Hunter.io because it was a couple of clicks, very similar to Shodan, and it allowed me to go ahead and get in there. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like. This is the Hunter.io when you actually log in. So when you log in, you end up on the dashboard, which is what you see right here. You can find leads and email addresses for prospecting, right? You can verify email addresses, send cold email campaigns, a bunch of other things that technically it can be used in the sales environment, but we're trying to look at it from the perspective of somebody who's trying to do hacking. So if I actually paste that domain that we had previously, the domain search example, of course it can't be found. And so then we have to go to try to find the discover portion of it, where we can go into a company name, for example, and then see what we can find for, I don't know, google.com, and that would be the company, right? And so we click on this, and then that would be our saved company. Then you can click on find email addresses under Google, and all of the personal email addresses, departments, 10 email addresses that were matched. Bulk will use from one in my plan, and I don't want to do it because I want to save my credits for this, because again, there's a paid version and a free version of this. There is also an API that's available here, which is super exciting, and we can even integrate with a variety of different things. But very, very cool tool. So you can use it for prospecting and sales, or you can try to find email addresses for doing hacking campaigns, which is what we're doing. Evil laugh. So, okay, let's move on to the next tool. And this is another really useful one, which is DNS Dumpster, that will map subdomains, mail servers, and DNS records visually. It can generate a complete list of DNS footprints of a target. It can expose misconfigured mail servers and network devices, and it's something that's available through a website, which makes it kind of handy. And so this is what we have over here. And so it's a free domain search tool that can discover hosts related to a domain. Visible host from attacker perspective is an important part, of the security assessment process. So if we go over here and do, I don't know, let's do tryhackme.com. Tryhackme.com, start test, and then it'll launch it. Cloudflare, Google are their servers. And if we go down a little bit further, we can start seeing that their blog at this IP address, Insights Proxy Worker, Remote TryHackMe, www TryHackMe, MX records are available, NS records, TXT records, all of these things. And then you get this visual graphic that's available for you. So free tool available. You don't even need a login. You don't need any kind of a username and password to be able to do this. So very, very cool tool. I love free tools that you can just use by just going to it. Free users are limited to 50 results for a single domain. Get 12 months plus access on sale now. So in case you wanted unlimited searches, then you can do that. But DNS Dumpster, another one of these tools that are just very, very powerful, very useful, and combining all of these records. We'll find out later on in future videos how you can actually use this various sets of data to your advantage to try to build attack vectors or exploits and things like that, and using the various sources of insight. So cyber threat intelligence, for example, the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, using things like that to connect the records of a given domain name to a potential attack vector. And then we'll be talking about those things as well. And there's already a lot of videos that exist on this channel that go through that thought process specifically of how to use the MITRE ATT&CK matrix to create attack vectors, but we'll be talking about it as we are talking about Pentest Plus. So that was it for DNS Dumpster. The next one is Amass, which is an automated DNS enumeration tool used for subdomain discovery, and this is a command line tool, as you can see right here, and this will extract subdomains and associated IP addresses for example.com, for example. And what I use specifically is GoBuster, because I really like GoBuster, and GoBuster requires you to assign some kind of a dictionary for it to use. Amass uses its internal dictionary to try to find subdomains and anything else, and I don't think it actually uses a dictionary even. I think it actually just scans the website to try to find whatever subdomains exist and the associated IP addresses for those domains. So it's a really powerful tool again as well, and I wouldn't choose one or the other. I would use both, right? So I would do Amass enumeration and then see if I kind of get whatever I get, and then after that I would use a massive dictionary using GoBuster and see what I can find using GoBuster, what I can enumerate using GoBuster. And some things that Amass may not find, GoBuster can find, or vice versa. Some things that GoBuster may not find, Amass can find. So when you combine your suite of resources, you get the most information possible, and then you'll have the most leverage possible to be able to create really sophisticated attack vectors to get everything that you want when you actually implement your ethical hacking or pen testing campaign. So that is it for Amass. And now we can move on to the wireless stuff. Nmap obviously is going to be on our list of network enumeration tools, and the Nmap scripting engine specifically is the element of Nmap that actually has a bunch of scripts inside of it. Now, Nmap scripting engine is the functionalities of Nmap combined with customizable scripts that you can use to do enumeration and gather intelligence. Now, we've already talked about these types of queries, right? So if you remember from the previous videos, when you do -p-, you are scanning all of the 65,000 plus ports for this specific domain name or a given IP address, because you can use it on a domain or you can use it on an IP address. And this is literally doing a basic TCP scan, because if you don't attach any other types of options like this and you just do Nmap and then you give it the port range, it'll do a basic TCP scan, which is a full TCP scan. It tries to make the full TCP three-way handshake with every single port of example.com, which is going to take a very long time. It takes a long time when you do this because it's literally scanning 65,000 plus ports. When you do the SV-O, it also will try to do a TCP scan. In this case, it's looking for the service and the operating system for every port, or the 1,000 most common ports, I should say that, because unless you do this, it's not going to look at every single of the ports. When you don't include a port range, it'll look at the 1,000 most common ports, and then it'll try to get the services that are running on it as well as the operating systems that are running. And again, you just provide the target domain or target IP address. When you want to look at vulnerabilities using the scripting engine, you would do the -- script, and then you give it the name of the script that you want to use. Now, when you pull up Nmap, the help menu for Nmap, it'll actually give you the list of these scripts that are available, and it actually has even a longer list of scripts that are available than the stuff that it gives you on the general help menu. There's a specific script list menu that will give you all the full scripts that are available inside of the scripting engine. But in this case, we are running the vulnerability script on this target domain, which is going to pull all of the vulnerabilities that it can find using its vulnerability script. It may not necessarily be comprehensive, so we're not saying that you're just going to use Nmap's vulnerability scan to try to find all the vulnerabilities. There are so many other ways that you can do it that will give you even more information, but this is a really good starting point. While you have Nmap up, you can just go ahead and accumulate as much information as you can about your target, including whatever vulnerabilities Nmap can actually find for you using a simple command line option like script equals vuln. And that is basically how we use Nmap for enumeration, which is what you see right here, as well as vulnerability scanning on a target domain or a target IP address. The Harvester is a really cool tool. I've actually used this in exercises before as well. And it collects email addresses, domains, and subdomains from public locations, from public databases. So this is the command itself. So the Harvester, the domain that you want to scan is this. So that would be the domain that we want to scan. The source that we want to use in this case would be Google. And then it's going to extract all the emails and subdomains from Google's database for this specific target domain. Now, this is where we get into the wireless network reconnaissance and enumeration. So Wiggle.net is a global database of Wi-Fi networks that are used for wireless recon. So you're trying to find wireless networks, Wi-Fi networks. So you can map open and weakly encrypted Wi-Fi hotspots, identifying physical locations of Wi-Fi networks. So let's go see what that looks like. And so here we go. So we have over 1.5 billion Wi-Fi networks that are available. Wi-Fi observations, over 21 billion Wi-Fi observations. Today, 595,000. Not sure exactly what this means. I guess it's probably the things that were scanned today or that were found today. Bluetooth devices, over 3.9 billion. And cell towers, 26 million cell towers. And it'll show you a heat map. This is what a heat map actually looks like. And then you can look at these specific points. So technically I guess kind of like, let me see if I can click on any of these. I feel like I should be able to. So if we zoom to this location, it gives us each one of these little purple dots are individual Wi-Fi access points. So not logged in, latitude and longitude for that specific location. Statistics over time that's available over here. So this is, it can kind of get you pretty close to what it is that you're trying to look for. So let's see if we do, let's say, Tropicana Avenue and Jones. There you go. Okay, so West Tropicana Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada. So we just click on that, and it takes us to Tropicana Avenue at the cross streets of Tropicana, and I wonder what the other cross street is that's right here. It doesn't show me, but you can actually search for a specific address, right? So Woodhue Lane, for example, Tropicana and Woodhue Lane is not a bad specific location that we can use here. And this is it. Like, it literally gives you these different elements right here. Now, not logged in is an interesting point. So log into Wiggle to use this feature. That's what that means. That means they want us to log in before we can do anything. So let me see if I can do a one-click registration real quick. And I cannot do a one-click registration. We have to fill out the form, agree to all of these things, because of course you can use this maliciously. But I'm really curious as to what data I'm going to be able to pull. So I actually want to register for this. So let me do the quick registration here. Okay, now we are logged in and we verified our email. So you need to verify your email before you can do anything here either. And now it's loading a specific point that I've clicked on, latitude, longitude, etc. And let's see what information we can actually pull from it. There we go. So we have the SSID is not present. The BSSID is over here. First time, last time, channel 1, encryption, WPA2, quality of the signal, and the specific address, as we can see right here. If I zoom in further, I can go ahead and look at more information about a specific location, right? So you can keep zooming in until you find more information about these things. So let's say you want to, and you can obviously just search for your specific address or the address that you're at to try to see what different IP addresses might exist, or not IP addresses, excuse me, SSIDs and things that might exist. So in this particular case, there's the actual SSID. So that's the name of the Wi-Fi that's available, the BSSID, channel 11, encryption, WPA2, etc., etc.
And so WPA2 is one of the more secure encryption standards that's available. And if you wanted to find something that would be easier to hack, you can go ahead and try to search for other types of encryption standards, right? So the view that we can see, oh, that's not the standard. It said, what's the view standard? And I thought it was asking me about the Wi-Fi W encryption standards that I wanted to do. If we go on view right here and do a basic search, we can actually go into the search right here as well as the map. So now we do have a map as well, but you can actually start doing a latitude longitude type of search if you wanted to look for Wi-Fi, cell towers, or Bluetooth, latitude and longitude, last updated, BSSID MAC address, SSID network name, only free networks. That's interesting. Only commercial pay networks, only networks. I was the first to see all of these things, so you can actually find this data. And so if I do only free networks, I wonder if it just shows me only the free networks that are available. And now we can actually see these are all free networks that are accessible, and most likely it could be a coffee place, it could be something else, and it shows us the encryption right there. So WPA is the encryption on these, and then you can do WPA as well. Starbucks Wi-Fi, you can see Juicy free, Areas free. So these are most likely the free Wi-Fi. Bears Best free Wi-Fi, Panera Cafe, Wayport Access. So these are actual Wi-Fi. So if you really needed a free Wi-Fi and you just want a map of the Wi-Fis that are around you, this is a great tool for that. And then there is the option of actually finding people's Wi-Fis at their houses that you can also do. so that's available. But yeah, let's not go too far down this rabbit hole yet. Let's go move on to the rest of our lecture. I have gone so far, like the recording is becoming much longer than I anticipated, mainly because of the fact that I'm getting distracted with all of these freaking rabbit holes. Okay, let's move on. Now, Wireshark and TCP dump are actually very useful tools that are used for packet analysis, and network sniffing is one of the key terms that have been used before. And TCP dump is a command line version of what Wireshark does. Wireshark has a graphical user interface, and there are very many videos on this channel using Wireshark. So if you are interested at all to learn about Wireshark and how to filter results and how to query results inside of a packet capture, you can just go look at any of those videos, and we'll be demonstrating what we can find with Wireshark and TCP dump when we get into the later episodes of this playlist. But if you are interested in it now, you can actually go ahead and get in-depth instructions on Wireshark. There are hours of instructions on Wireshark and how you can use it to sniff network traffic, how you can use it to filter the network packets so you can get some interesting data and get some interesting information. Now, some of the common use cases from the perspective of hacking and pen testing is that you can actually get clear text data, right? So HTTP is the clear text version, the unencrypted version of HTTPS, right? So when you're interacting with a website or any kind of web-based server or service, you are using HTTP, right? HTTPS is when something has been secured using some kind of encryption, SSL, TLS, etc. FTP is the file transfer protocol, and then there's SFTP or FTPS, which would be the encrypted version of that protocol. But if you are trying to just search for HTTP or FTP, then what you're going to end up finding is clear text data that's being transferred back and forth. And inside of that clear text data, sometimes you can find credentials, which will then allow you to log in as somebody or do some things. So analyzing DNS queries and their responses would be another common use case where, if you do a GET query, GET request to a website to see what the response is going to be, what the data that's passed from that response, are there any tokens or keys that are passed back and forth between those responses? This is all useful information. So a packet sniffer, these things are also really known to give you granular inspection of packet data. So that's the key element of Wireshark that makes it so useful. It's open source, it's free to install, free to download, and it comes pre-installed with Kali Linux, right? And so this is a really, really powerful tool that can give you granular view of packets inside of network traffic that you've sniffed, and inside of those packets you can find some really interesting information, assuming that you know what to search for. So this is the key about Wireshark, is that it can get you a lot of really details, a lot of real detailed information, but if you don't know what you're looking for, it's just going to be garbage to you. It's like useless to you. So one of the key things is to know what you're actually looking for, and that's why Wireshark can be as powerful as it is. And then TCP dump essentially does the same thing, except it's just a command line version of Wireshark. So inside of Wireshark, you can choose an interface. So ETH0, Ethernet 0 would be the interface that you would choose to scan inside of Wireshark. If you use TCP dump, then you would do the -I to assign an interface, and then you would do ETH0, and then you would do N to not resolve any DNS names, and then you would give it the port itself that you want to get access to, so port 80. And port 80 is the port that's assigned to HTTP traffic, and you don't want to resolve any domain names, you just want to get all the IP addresses for it. So you would capture live network traffic on this specific on this specific port for this specific interface. And ideally, you would also choose the option to output the data into some kind of a file, a PCAP file, packet capture file, for analysis later on. Because this version, what you're seeing right here, is going to be a live analysis. It's a live network traffic, which is going to most likely kind of pollute your screen with a bunch of packets, a bunch of data, and it's going to constantly be updating live. So if you want to find something interesting, and if you want to kind of investigate through the data, you might miss it because it's going to constantly update your screen. So anyways, that's the difference between Wireshark and TCP dump. And I mean, I'll just show you real quick where you can get Wireshark if you don't want to use Kali Linux, or if you want to just install Wireshark on your Windows computer, for example. This is the download page for Wireshark, and it's available at wireshark.org/download.html. You can also just Google download Wireshark and just make sure that you come to their website. Please don't download it from any other location, because it could be messed with, it could be tampered with or manipulated with a variety of different edits that could actually put you at risk. So either get it directly from Kali.org, the Kali Linux website, and have it installed as a part of the Linux distribution, because that's a trusted source, or you come to wireshark.org and you download it. And then there's the Windows version, the Mac OS version, there's source code for it, documentation that's available for how to use it, and then there's a lot of different other versions of it that you can do. So there we go, the Linux versions and etc. There's a lot of different versions of this that you can install. It comes pre-installed with Kali Linux, so that's why I kind of rely on Kali Linux, because it has most of the tools that I would ever need for cybersecurity and pen testing. But if you want to just install it on your own computer, just to capture the traffic on your own computer, just so you can see what's going on and kind of get a taste of it, you can go ahead and download it and then install it, and then go watch one of the Wireshark videos that are on this channel to just kind of have a blast and really learn how to analyze the packet capture, how to query the packet capture to try to find different types of packets inside of it, etc., etc. So Wireshark, very, very powerful tool. TCP dump, it comes pre-installed with Linux and Unix computers, so there is no TCP dump for Windows computers, but there is a version of it on Windows. But if you're, instead of using command line version of packet capture on Windows, I would just recommend that you install Wireshark, because I'm going to be using Wireshark. I'm not going to be using TCP dump. I rarely go to TCP dump unless it's like a last resort, because it's just too much data that's going to be populated onto the screen, and it's going to make it very, very difficult to try to find what you're looking for. So it's the default recommendation is to get Wireshark and then use Wireshark for network sniffing, packet capture, packet analysis. And now we can move on to the favorite of many hackers, which is going to be Aircrack and Airmon. Aircrack NG is a pen testing suite for cracking the wireless of somebody. So let's say you go to that map that we found, right? And you're trying to find somebody's address or the wireless, or you're sitting outside their building, or you're sitting outside their house, and you want to try to crack their password on their Wi-Fi. You would use this tool right here. Again, please don't do this without permission. Please don't do this. It is a felony. It's not cool to do. And this is what I was going to use against my neighbor, but I decided against it. It requires a Wi-Fi adapter that actually supports discovery mode in order for you to be able to discover the Wi-Fi's around you and then to be able to use its various features to crack the passwords of those Wi-Fi's. There's a monitor mode that will start monitoring what would be available around you on your interface. So let's say the WLAN interface, AirMon NG start WLAN will start monitoring around you to see what's going on. And then to try to capture a handshake, AeroDump NG will be able to do that. And then if you want to crack the password, we'll talk about that when we actually get into the specific application, when we get into our practical exercises in our practical video. But this is the tool. When you're trying to crack passwords for somebody's Wi-Fi, this is the tool that I was introduced to. This is the tool that I think many pen testers default to. And this is most likely going to be the tool that if you're hired to do some kind of black hat, or not black hat, excuse me, that's the wrong term, black box. Black hat pen testing is malicious pen testing. Black hat hacking is malicious hacking. It's something that is highly, highly advised against. Please do not do black hat hacking because that literally is the felony. That's when you do something that you have no permission to do and you're doing it with malicious intentions. And I just can't say this enough. Please, please be aware of it. Please be careful not to use these tools in malicious environments because it can get you in a lot of trouble. You can cause a lot of damage. And it's just not cool to do. But this is the tool. If you get black box pen testing, hired to do a black box pen test, which means you get no information about anything and you have to try and find the information. So when you get to the point that you're trying to enumerate their Wi-Fi and actually find what Wi-Fi SSIDs are available and then try to hack into the Wi-Fi, this is the tool that you would end up using, which is AirCrack NG. That's the suite of the tools. And then inside of AirCrack NG, you have AirMon, AeroDump, etc. And this is the point at which we go into our practice questions for the reconnaissance and enumeration tools. And just like everything else, the question format is aligned with the Pentest Plus examination. There will be multiple choice questions, multiple response questions, and performance-based questions. Now, in this slideshow that I'm about to use, the only performance-based questions that I could actually embed in there are the scenario-based ones. But inside of the document, this doc that I'm using for the lecture, there's the drag and drop questions, there's the matching questions as well, and you're going to see all of these types of questions should you choose to take the Pentest Plus certification exam. And a lot of the questions, especially as we go into the exploits and everything else that's going to present command line commands as well as arguments and the responses to those commands, you're going to have to analyze what a command is doing and then see, describe or choose from the answers what that command is doing, or they're going to give you a response from a command, and then you're going to have to choose what the original command was that elicited that response. They will sometimes show you screenshots of the tools that you will have to recognize and see what it's at least trying to do. Even if you don't recognize the tool itself, you will get a screenshot of the result from the tool, and you'll be like, oh, it looks like it's doing a vulnerability scan, or maybe this was like a network traffic capture that was done. So that's kind of the gist of the types of questions that you will end up facing. And for the most part, just understand that we can't actually share the actual questions from the Pentest Plus examination, nor can we share any of the questions from any of the CompTIA exams, simply because the fact that you sign an NDA when you go and take your exam, and they had me do it as well for my CYSA Plus and everything. So it's like when you go into these exams, you literally sign an NDA saying that you're not going to share any of the official questions from the examination. No entity outside of CompTIA has access to the actual questions from the exams, which means if you get it from Udemy, if you get it from any other source, I promise you it's not going to be the exact question. So the thing that I'm going to share with you
is to try to teach you the overall concept. Like, the reason why I go as deep as I go into these different sections is because I want you to understand the concept behind each of these questions. And when we look at the questions, we try to work through the logic behind the selection of the answers so you get the thought process behind it. I want you to learn how to think about these things so that you're not just doing memorization and trying to memorize the correct answer, etc. It's more about learning how to process, learning how to perform the actual analytical thinking element of it so you really do get good at it. And that's kind of the gist behind this whole thing. So that being said, let's actually jump into the slideshow so we can go through the questions for section 2.4. All right, here we go. Tools for recon and enumeration. The first question is, which of the following tools is best used to retrieve archived versions of websites that may contain outdated or sensitive content? So we're kind of starting from the very top as far as the various sections that we had. So this will help you at least narrow down the type of information. So Shodan is the search engine for hackers, right? You can find devices that are exposed to the internet. Recon NG is something that will help you do reconnaissance against a domain name. Wireshark is for packet analysis and network sniffing, network packet capture. The only thing that actually will give you an archived version of a website would be the Wayback Machine. So there we go. Which tools can be used for mapping out relationships between people, domains, email addresses, and IP addresses? And to be honest with you, I kind of already forgot. So actually Maltego, I think Maltego is definitely one of them. Spiderfoot, TCP dump is the packet capture. SQL map is for analyzing relational databases and getting information about relational databases. So it has to be Maltego and Spiderfoot. And that by the way, what you just saw is sometimes what I do when I'm not like 100% sure of the answer, so I will go through the process of elimination, which is one of the key aspects of test taking. So it may not necessarily be the best for remembering information and real world stuff, but when you're taking tests, one of the key strategies is the process of elimination. And I know for a fact that it's not TCP dump. I know for a fact it's not SQL map. I know that Maltego is one of the things that we can do. And in Spiderfoot, I forgot what it kind of did, but then now just looking at the question and at this, getting rid of these questions, we now know that it can map out relationships between people, etc. So Maltego and Spiderfoot are our answers. Which tool provides domain registration details like contact info, name servers, and expiration dates? So Nmap is network mapping, right? It's the network enumeration tool. The Harvester harvests data from websites. So for example, pulling email addresses, right? Whois will actually give you the information about a domain name, and Amass will gather information about the domain name as well. Now, what I know is that, or what I think is that the Amass tool will give you more information, for example, contact info and those things. And I don't think Whois will give you as much information as Amass would. I think Whois is limited on its output, and just based on that, I would say Amass would be the answer, but I think Whois can also be the answer. So this is one of those things that I'm gonna do a toss up, and I'll just choose Amass. But I think Whois can potentially also be the answer for this question, and it is in this case the answer for the question. So I have to verify what Amass does because I really feel silly for not knowing that answer. Okay, so Amass is a DNS enumeration tool used for subdomain discovery. So that's what it actually does. It has nothing to do with the records of the domain, like for example, contact information and the name servers, things like that. So I was actually way off, and that's technically considered a wrong answer. So that was a wrong answer for me, and I am not perfect. So I apologize for having the wrong answer. Moving on to the next one. Which of the following are DNS-focused tools
used for subdomain enumeration and domain mapping. We literally just saw that Amass is one of them, so that's for sure one of them. DNS Dumpster, AirCrackNG, John the Ripper. John the Ripper is my favorite password cracking tool, so I know that that's not the answer. AirCrackNG is something that we use for wireless enumeration and specifically cracking wireless passwords and getting into wireless networks, so that can't be it either. Amass, for sure, we just saw that it was for enumeration of subdomains, and then DNS Dumpster was another one of those tools. It was a web-based tool that we got a chance to go and just type in the domain, and then from there it gave us all of the subdomains for TryHackMe, if you remember that example. So it's Amass and DNS Dumpster are the answers. Which tool allows penetration testers to collect email addresses and subdomains using search engines and public sources? So this is the key phrase right here that kind of gives me a little bit of extra insight. And so Wireshark, again, is not the tool because it does packet capture for a network sniffing. Amass is a subdomain enumerator, so we know that those two are not the answers. The Recon does reconnaissance against a domain name, but to collect email addresses and subdomains, so harvesting, right? So think about collecting email addresses specifically from search engines and public sources. It would be the Harvester tool. Which of the following tools are used for wireless network reconnaissance? Select two of them. So Wiggle was the one where we actually saw the heat map of the various wireless connections that were around me by my map, which is pretty crazy. AirCrackNG can also help you find out what wireless networks are around you and then how to crack into them. Nmap is a network mapper. Nmap, I guess, can technically find a wireless router around you. Maybe that could be potentially one of the things that it can do. DNS Dumpster, not so much because it's pulling DNS records. My response for this would be A and B, and that is indeed the answer. Nmap can, I think, through some of its scripts, maybe it can potentially pull that information, but you're looking for obvious answers. That's another one of these things that I'll kind of throw at you. For the most part, you're looking for the most obvious answer. If you have to convince yourself of an answer, it's most likely not the answer. So just keep that piece in mind as well. Now here we go. Our first scenario is you are tasked with gathering information about a company's online infrastructure. You begin by querying the Whois records, collecting email addresses with the Harvester, and running a DNS Dumpster scan to map subdomains. Which type of reconnaissance are you performing, and which tools align with this activity? So we're doing two choices here. So passive reconnaissance, technically we are actually doing passive reconnaissance because we're pulling everything from public databases, OSINT records. So I think that would actually be the answer. We're not doing active scanning of anything because it won't show up on their intrusion detection, the stuff that we're doing. Like when you can pull a Whois record by just doing a Google, or like by going to a variety of different websites that do it. So you're not technically doing an active scan. DNS Dumpster was a website that pulls the information for you. And again, it's not technically an active scan, it's an OSINT. And then the Harvester is also pulling things from search engines and public databases. So that's definitely not an active scan. So it's not an active scan, and we're not stuffing credentials into anything. So that's the other thing where it's like, okay, well, it's passive reconnaissance for sure, and we're using Whois, the Harvester, and DNS Dumpster. So obviously the tools are literally inside of the question. So that one's kind of a gimme. It's like a layup. And then we're doing passive reconnaissance. So those are our two answers. During a wireless assessment, you use AeroDump NG to capture WPA handshake packets, then upload the data to AirCrackNG for offline cracking. You also search wiggle.net to cross-reference known SSID. So this is all wireless. So which two tools were used for wireless reconnaissance and attack? So we had AirCrackNG, which is the overall suite of tools that includes AeroDump inside of it, and obviously AirCrackNG. They're referencing it here as the command line tool here. So we have AeroDump and AirCrack that are actually inside of the question itself, and it's saying which tools were used for wireless recon and attack. Technically, we did also use wiggle.net, but it's not in our questions here. Nmap is for Network mapping, Recon NG, is for getting DNS records and reconnaissance against a domain, and it, I think for the most part, is not going to be used against a wireless reconnaissance and attack. So it would be A and B would be our answers here. They're literally inside the question. You're not going to get questions that are this obvious, but again, I want you to kind of understand the logic behind trying to find the answers, and at the very least work through the answers and try to do some kind of a process of elimination, so on and so forth. This question, it's a silly question. I shouldn't have even included this question, but whatever, we got it. All right, moving on. A client wants to know how visible their infrastructure is to attackers on the public internet. You use Shodan and Census to identify their exposed services, SSL certificates, and metadata, okay? Which of the following best describes these tools and their function? So they are the search engines, right? They're essentially search engines that can find devices that are connected to the internet. That's what we know about Shodan and Census. So DNS mapping tools for internal scanning, no, because we're looking at publicly available information that other people can find. It wouldn't be internal. Internet-facing search engines for service enumeration. That's pretty solid. Local traffic analyzers for wireless capture. That would not be it, because we're not doing anything that has to do with local traffic analysis to wireless devices. And then file enumeration tools for SMB shares. That's not what we're doing. We can potentially find SMB shares by trying to find open ports that are default SMB share ports, but we're not doing file enumeration for those things. So the closest answer, the most precise, like the strongest answer would be internet-facing search engines for service enumeration. And that's it. So our next main module is going to be under the category of vulnerability and vulnerability discovery, vulnerability scanning, and things like that. And so the first section of that will be vulnerability discovery techniques. And of course, the series of questions that will come up in our slideshow will be the next series of questions for vulnerability discovery techniques. I hope you found value out of this episode. We covered a lot of stuff. This was a longer episode than I had anticipated. So hopefully you found it useful. Hopefully I didn't go off on too many tangents, and you were able to get some value out of the various tools that we covered, and you know now where to get those tools and what the purposes of those various tools are as far as reconnaissance and enumeration is concerned. And I hope that you will kind of go play around with them, use them a little bit until we actually get to the practical elements of this playlist, of this training series. So I hope you'll get some exposure to these tools before we actually go into the practical uses of them. Stay tuned for a quick message on how you can get this slideshow, which is going to be several hundred pages of questions as well as several hundred pages of notes inside of the notes document. And of course, how you can get access to our community inside of Discord, and how to get access to me directly, and a variety of other amazing benefits that are a part of Hackaholics Anonymous. So you're about to learn how to get all of this information out of these downloads for the Pentest Plus training series and everything else too. To get the Pentest Plus notes, practice questions, and to join a supportive community of like-minded people like you, consider joining the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels will get exclusive content like line-by-line code explanations for how to create cybersecurity and Pentest Plus scripts, like exclusive downloads that they will get. For example, the notes document for this Pentest Plus and everything that I'm using for the lectures, as well as all of the practice questions and everything else that will go along that will be made for the scripts and everything else that we're going to be doing for the Pentest Plus training series. There will be free pre-made monthly Python automations that have to do with system administration, cybersecurity defense, as well as, of course, Pentest Plus and ethical hacking. And then there's going to be monthly live streams with me every single month, plus so many other things that you would get as a part of being a member of Hackaholics Anonymous in these tiers. To join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, Or you can go to youtube.com/@hankhackshackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous.